Welcome. My name is Natasha Sherman, and I am your host. And this is part 2 of an interview with John Brogan, who is the Chief Recovery Specialist at Lifeline Recovery Support Services, and Joseph Coronato, who is the Ocean County Prosecutor. Welcome back, both of you.
Great.
So we've been talking, about your journey and about things that are being done. I want to ask some very specific questions for a mother out there who is watching this show, or a family member, or just someone in a school. I know there's no easy answer. There's no one size fits all, but I think that most people haven't got a clue. Like, if your child comes home, young adult, whatever, and says, I think I have a problem with drugs. Now, either one of you can take this. What do you do?
I'm going to say this. I don't think a child's going to come home and say that. That's the first thing. I mean, I think you have to be a little bit more inquisitive. I think part of it is the fact is that's the erosion of the family. People, don't sit down at the dinner table together anymore, talk and have that conversation. So I think most families are off in their rooms, separated, not really understanding what's going on. That's part of the issue that has happened here. I think, but once
so then someone comes and says, okay, I think your son or daughter is doing drugs.
Well, I think you should be the one, or somebody should really.
But what if you're clueless? You haven't noticed the signs.
Well, once you find out that there's a problem, then you really truly do have a problem. And you need to be able to take that individual, hopefully, and go someplace that can address it. And that's the issue as to whether you're going to call New Jersey Reach, or whether you're going to go out to, in our case, go to one of our Blue Heart stations. Bottom line is that you want to take it someplace, and that goes back to what we were saying before. That's why John is so important, and the recovery coaches are so important. You need somebody who's walked the walk, because a parent talking to a child or a loved one talking to another loved one most likely is not going to be convinced that person they have a problem. You need somebody who has been in the throes of that problem,
who can recognize
it, can relate to it, and can help that person. And that's why there's this issue, there's that breakdown. That's why I'm embedded with the recovery coaches, because I could see the success that they have in reaching that person and convincing the person that they almost walked into the light. And this becomes a dramatic moment in their life where they need to be able to change that effort and get the help that they need. Then you need to be able to get them to the right individual.
Well, that's what I'm after. It's like, step one. So first of all, I think stigma prevents people from reaching out. Not my child, but I interviewed the former chief of police of West Long Branch, and his son was an addict and did come to him at one point and say, I have a problem. But again, there was no kind of, I think at one point he overdosed, they did Narcan. When they released him, I think they gave him a list from the hospital, a list of places. So what would need to happen? So,
I mean, that's the crisis management piece. That's the crisis intervention piece. We're lined up with them all day long. We're with Lifeline and Blue Heart. There needs to be an intervention. The first piece is always, we talk about leverage. What leverage do you have? Is it emotional leverage? Is it legal leverage? Is it the family leverage? They need to be separated almost immediately, because the person suffering from substance use disorder on a very subconscious level, and this is why it's so delicate, because if I come at them and say, you blah, 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 they're going to run. You have to talk to them and let them know you've walked the walk, like the prosecutor was saying. But then once you get them convinced, and this is where the breakdown happened, this is where we've really gotten it right with Blue Heart, is where are you going to go with that individual? Once you have won their trust over and you're grabbing them by the hand, where are you going to go with them? And you have to go into a true continuum of care where that recovery coach is with them the entire time. You're tracking them through the entire system. That's where we're finding the success of this program. You
so
cannot
let's say,
just.
What is that? What is that path?
It looks different for every individual. They come in all shapes and sizes. The key is the recovery, the disciplines of the recovery. And
so detox is just the first step. Detox is not recovery.
No.
Because I think people live under
make
the
them more
illusion.
vulnerable.
Yeah, it's complicated.
Right.
And what I mean by complicated is that you need somebody to clinically break down that person. They probably not only have a substance abuse problem, they most likely have a mental health problem, they probably have a legal problem, and they probably have a social problem. So it has to be almost like a holistic event. And then you add on to all that they're broke. They have absolutely no money whatsoever.
Good point. Okay.
So it is, when I say complicated, it is very complicated. And
So
if you
let's
don't-
say all those things are in place. What do you do?
And that's the problem. We need to address it, and from my standpoint, make a good run right from the very beginning. And what we've done in our system so far, from my standpoint, has had a soft handoff, where we all are in our own silos, where just the detox take of it, and then there's supposed to be some sort of handoff to treatment, and then treatment takes it, and then is there a true handoff to, let's say, sober living? And the problem really is, are they being tracked, and are they interested in outcomes? And how is that handoff, and how are they followed? Is it a human being that's following them all the way through? So
is that happening?
That's what we're trying to do. What we're trying to do is change the face of how we address these people, how to help them, okay? And from my standpoint, make a good run at them from the very, very beginning. Because otherwise what we're doing is recycling them, coming in and going over and over again. It's cost preventive, and also you're going to lose human life. So what is important for us is to continue to drill down on the procedures, on our methodology of what we're going to do with those individuals. And then ultimately what we need to do is find out the outcomes, whether we've been successful. And if we haven't been successful, why haven't we been successful?
To answer your question, yes. For the last year, with Blue Heart, really, it started before that with the ORB program, but with Blue Heart, we have gotten our hands around the tracking, and we're not out of the weeds by any stretch at all. But since January 11th of 2017 was when we started, we are tracking at about a 50-60% success ratio. When I say success, I mean we've tracked about 115 people that are still clean and sober. They're not dead, which is the most important part of the success. And they've tracked through a continuum, a detox, a treatment continuum, onto sober living, attacking their legal problems, into Governor McGreevy's reentry program, where we're helping them get their bank accounts, their licenses, the holistic approach, and becoming viable members of society. Now, that can happen in New Jersey. The odds are against you because of you're in the same demographic and location. Sometimes they go to Texas, sometimes they go to Minnesota, sometimes they go up to Maine. It depends on where our resources are on the national level to get that scholarship bed.
Yeah, it's like changing the culture of the person, and also, I don't mean to sound crude, but it's almost like rebooting a computer, changing their mindset. Sometimes we can
It's
do
like
that.
raising a child.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is.
Changing, taking them out of the culture that they're in. And when you say success, I mean, I don't know of any, whether, for me, I look at every 6 month point, that I want to take a look at. When you make it 6 months, that's somewhat of a success. When you make it a year, that's a great success. When you make it 18 months, from my standpoint, and I'm not a healthcare specialist, but I think 2 years is the year that I will look at. I think that if you've made it to the 2 year point, the chance of you have actually staying in recovery and addressing it, it's something you're going to stay with for the rest of your life, but I think that you have a really good chance that you're not going to relapse. The bottom line is 18 months to 2 years is the area that I'm looking for. That's
Yeah, and I think, again, people are so confronted by this. If it hits their family, they're just looking quick at detox and not all those steps that have to follow.
Here's what happens.
I want to interrupt. What keeps you clean and sober? You're almost 7 years.
It's the disciplines of recovery. I'm a fundamentalist. I mean, I am, and that's what we try to. That's the successful parts of the clients that we send to the fundamentals of the 12 steps, which is the basics that our grandparents always taught us. Don't lie, don't steal, don't cheat. This is how you do it. Like there's a funny saying they always say. Well, how do I not lie anymore? Well, you don't lie. Right? Oh, duh. It's pretty simple, but it's these things. It's become habit, routine, and it's a growing process where inside those disciplines of the 12 steps, you can really, you can really latch on and get some accountability in your life and grow. And most important part of the 12th step is you're going back around to step 1 by helping others. That's the whole glue to this thing. The key to our problem is selfish, self-centered nature, right? So how do we overcome that? We do selfless things.
And I think what you said, Joe, before was the idea is to make them viable members of society.
Purpose.
Absolutely. I mean, my crime rate's going to fall. The benefit, they're going to be, they're going to be working in society, supporting themselves, becoming, again, viable members of society. That's our ultimate goal. It's not necessarily, again, I believe in accountability, and some of the individuals have to go to jail because they have to be held accountable for their actions. But putting that aside, at some point, once they've done their time, once they've concluded they paid their debt to society, so to speak, okay, we need to make sure that they get back into society and become viable individuals. Look, it's a complex problem. Okay.
Definitely.
And it's not something, and you have to understand, this is not a sprint. This is a marathon that we're put in. I mean,
right. Lifelong marathon, actually.
Absolutely. And what we have to understand is that from the law enforcement standpoint, we need to partner up. And I kind of broke it down into 3 blocks. I partner up with the educational community because I strongly believe in prevention.
Yeah.
I think that we need to be embedded in the schools. I think we need to show that this is a road that we don't need to go down. The second block is strong law enforcement, where we come in and that we hold the predators together. I have my, we lead the state in overdose deaths in the sense that we hold accountability, strict liability. So if you are a drug dealer and you sell drugs and it kills somebody, we're going to hold you for that homicide. We're going to go back and charge you. So I believe in strong law enforcement. And then the third block is breaking the cycle of addiction. So if you just work on one block, you're not going to be able to properly address it. You have to do all 3 blocks, and you need to drive all 3 blocks hard. And if you do that, I think in the end, I think you'll see some success.
It makes sense. I think for me, one of the most challenging things probably is the prevention aspect, because I think the context in which we live doesn't support well-being for the most part. It doesn't support community. We live in the age of technology, and people are more and more separating from each other. We give up what we long for most, which is connection. And then it's the whole, the tribe, the community. Yeah. And it's funny, because in this Broken Brain series, they talked about, there are some basic things. And I don't know if you deal with this in recovery, diet, sleep, exercise, all of that. But one of the things that they said, and there have been studies done all over the world about longevity, that the thing that contributes more to longevity than medicine is community, connection.
Yep.
And I think that's what gets us in trouble in the first place, is this lack of connection. And then that hole you keep trying to fill, like, do I belong? And, it could be simple little programs in the school where you're not going in and talking about addiction, but you're teaching them to love one another, and you're teaching them. Yes,
there's 2 things you're talking about that are very important, and this goes to the prosecutor's point. We've partnered with Dr. Tomey at Rutgers University, who has come up with this prevention book. And to Prosecutor Coronato's point, starting at I have a daughter that's 7 now, it's a book, A Tale of the Raccoon, where it's talking about a raccoon that's leaving its family and coming back, feeling part of. My youngest daughter, and me and my wife talk about it all the time, the struggles we go through with our daughter, because she always wants to be with her 2 older sisters. That's when it's the hardest to manage, because when they need their time by themselves. You should see, to a man and to a woman, when we have a Blue Heart client, or any client for that matter, that's in crisis management, and we say, come with us, and they believe it, and we bring them back to our recovery center, and they feel a sense of belonging.
That's all.
That's all everyone's looking for.
And we should be doing that.
It's erosion of the family unit, and I would agree
100%.
But again, the family unit has fallen apart, and it may continue to fall apart. It's like you can create community, because you don't want to hold it just down that narrow funnel. You can create community like they have in some of the schools. I see these things online, usually in Scandinavian countries, these things happen where they have this, where if you see someone sitting alone on a playground, you're trained to immediately go, hey, can I be your friend? Or can I, what's going on? Or they are taking them out into nature and nature walks. And young adults are moving into senior centers, free education, free room and board, but they interact with. It's all about interaction. So it doesn't have to be, don't do drugs. We know how that worked. Mm-hmm. And it's just developing a sense of belonging, whether you're in a family or a classroom or a Boy Scout troop.
I think people think when we talk about education, we're talking about high school. And I'm not even talking about middle school, because we definitely need to be in the middle school.
Right.
I'm actually talking about going into grammar school.
Right. And
I'm talking about taking them in. The professor told me what the whole idea is, the raccoon, is that the body is a chalice almost. You only want to put good things into your body. Mm-hmm. What you really want to do is teach the younger generation that your body's a temple, and that you only want to do the right things for your body, and that putting drugs or putting other stuff that you don't know what it is not the right thing to do. And I think that you can do that at the grammar school level.
But there's a disconnect, because they watch television and they're telling you to take drugs.
Well, they're doing a bunch of different things. They're telling you to take stuff that's just not good, a lot of sugar, a lot of other stuff that I agree.
Lucky Charms.
Right, and I think the bottom line is that in the health classes, that's something that needs to be repeated.
It has to be pervasive.
Every year, from the 4th grade to the 5th grade to the 6th grade. You just can't come in and say, well, we're going to do the 7th grade and now we're going to do the 11th grade. That's not going to work.
Yeah.
I think the bottom line is something that has to be a philosophy that's going to be carried right through those years. It's a path that you don't want to go down.
The philosophy of embracing one another, of loving one another. It's like, it's somewhere you were.
Language of the heart.
Language of the heart. I mean, that's it. And we do not do heart-centered education.
It is what worked when that man, I talk about it, Chris Brennan, all the time, he sat across from me and he told me about what my problem was and how to fix it. And it works the same thing. It'll work tonight in our family group that we have. It works every single time. In the beginning, he thought we were going to shoot for like an 18 or 20% success ratio. And I said, we're going to go higher. And it's because of, now where you go with them is a different story and having the continuum. But if I had the perfect continuum today,
yes, let's talk about that.
We would have a 70, 80, 90%, because they don't, this is how it is. When I'm in active addiction, people are saying to me, you have so much potential. You served the country, you're so smart, you're athletic. Why can't you just stop doing it? And on the inside, I'm saying, I want to stop and I can't. Mm. And that is the issue. And because of my ego and self-centered nature, I'm never going to tell you that. Mm-hmm. But I'm going to keep trying, and I just keep hitting a wall over and over again. It was until someone reached across and said, here, this is how you do it. And if you do this, you'll get this. If you don't do this, this is what's going to happen to you.
And what was some of this? You went to the Salvation Army, right?
I went to the Salvation Army in Trenton. Yeah, that was my alma mater.
And was that rigorous?
If I had known what I know now, I would have never gone. But it was same thing as Parasana in the Marine Corps. If I had known what I was going into in Parasana, I would have never in a million years.
Right.
But I did it. And I wouldn't trade it for $1 million. So. Yeah. It is because you're going inside, you're going internal, you're looking at all those scary ghosts that you never want to look at. And you know what you find out at the end of the day? They weren't really that scary.
That's right.
That is the whole, it's like I love my 7-year-old is our biggest challenge, and we love her so much. But, she is, in the downstairs, her room is downstairs, mm-hmm. right, by our room. And a lot of times we're upstairs. And you'll hear her, when she's downstairs and realizes that we're all upstairs, you'll hear her sprinting up the stairs because she wants to be part of us, mm-hmm. right? She's sprinting. I'm like, Emma, why are you running upstairs? She's like, well, I don't want to be alone downstairs. I'm scared. Well, let's go downstairs and look at what it's the same thing. What are you scared of? Mm-hmm. What are you scared of?
Yeah, scared of being human being.
There you go.
Yeah. And then, as you said, if you're willing to take the journey, because, I'm a life coach. And so, again, it's always, I tell them the news is really good. I mean, when we get inside and we look at what's there, everybody's afraid they're going to find out how yucky they are. But you're really going to find out it's the good news.
What are we chasing after? Peace of mind.
Yeah.
Self-worth.
Right. There you go.
I mean, that's the bottom line, the self-worth. And, again, from the law enforcement standpoint, we just need to know that we can't do it by ourselves, that we need to form the partnerships, form the partnerships with the educational community, with the healthcare community, and the biggest word is to be able to communicate. And as long as we're able to communicate, you know, I think that we have a shot at this.
Here's the thing that really I'm thrilled that you're here, is because I've interviewed, you know, people who have been wrongfully convicted, prosecutorial misconduct, and I mean, you can make a case for there are a lot of really uncaring people in the legal field. But you're sitting here and you're talking about like really caring about people and really seeing them as human beings and really like caring that 112 or 211 overdosed. And you're doing something about it. So I think that's pretty amazing. The question is, who else should be doing this and isn't? And what partners do you need that you don't have yet?
Well, from my standpoint, people are listening. People are talking. There's a new approach that's going to address, look, law enforcement's going to do their job. We've always done our job. We're going to work hard to try to address this, but we realize now that we can't do it by ourselves. And I think that we have to understand, like I said, that these are people too. They're human beings, and we need to address it. Someone's loved one, okay? And we need to make an attempt to try to get them out of that addiction. Now, again, I don't want people to misunderstand. You still, as part of recovery, is that you have to be accountable and acknowledge what you did wrong.
But that doesn't mean that, you know, again, you can hold people accountable and treat them like dirt, or you can hold people accountable and treat them like human beings.
If you are truly in recovery, when you get to your 8th and 9th step, that's your amends. And if you're in a true program of recovery, I can come to you because I've wronged you, and amend means to make right. It's not I'm sorry. So when I sit across from you and say, how do I make this right? And you say, you owe me $100. I have to pay you back that $100, whether it's 25 cents a week or the whole 100 in one shot. And you're entitled to tell me you're a real you-know-what. And I'm supposed to take that into consideration, say God bless you, say a prayer for you, and on my way. And now I'm free.
Yes.
I don't carry that around anymore. That is same thing. If I go and rob a bank, I have to be accountable for that.
May not like it.
I may not like it, but guess what? I'm going to have a program of recovery to deal with it.
Yeah.
And maybe God's got a job for me to go inside the jail and start talking to guys about recovery in there.
194 people have walked in. We've not made any promises to any of those individuals that came in. They all knew that they came in, they wanted our help. We said, we're going to help you, okay? We don't ask them for money. We don't ask them for anything. You want help, we're going to help you. No promises. I think it's up to me, though, in my judgment, that later on when we review their charges, not that I'm going to pass along and forgive them for what they did. I'll take into the accountability that they stepped up to the plate and that they wanted to help themselves, but that doesn't exonerate them for what they did.
Totally get it.
The program works, and you could see it in their life. And the bottom line is people are thanking us for us. And, you know, the family unit's thanking for us, the husbands, the wives, the mothers, the fathers. They realize that now there's a source, there's a place that we can turn to, that maybe there is a lifeline, so to speak.
Right. So then I have another question. You know, money is an issue.
Yeah.
Needing to get grants and support and everything else. Also, it occurs to me like people then start to compete for a slice of the pie.
No.
Really?
Really? We didn't know that.
So, and again, you know, you look at, like the national government, you know, the FBI doesn't tell the CIA, and the CIA, no, that's our piece of information, our piece of the pie, and we're not going to tell you this. And, you know, it's like we're all little children in the playground protecting our little, you know, popsicle. And we still haven't elevated that conversation. So I'm assuming that that's going on in the world of getting money for
merit and accountability. It's like you were talking about the philosophy in the schools. It's changed. People don't like it, but it clearly has to happen based on the numbers. And from my perspective, when you do the right thing happens. May not happen in the time frame you want it to be. There's been a whole lot of money for a long period of time flowing into the same system.
So is that changing?
I think it's going to have to start to change. just based on the sheer numbers.
Right, because you keep throwing the money in the same place. It's not producing the.
Just throwing money at the problem is not going to solve the
got
problem.
Right.
I think you have to be smart where you place it. Now, look, do we need money to help to get out of it? There's no question about it.
Right.
But it has to be placed the right way. And I also think that what we really need to do is do it wisely. I mean, I think you make it, like I say, for good sake, make a good run initially. And look, it's a complex problem that needs to be looked at, but I think they are looking at it now, and I think again, we're not going to buy our ways out of this problem. You know, too many ways we think that if we just throw a lot of money at the problem, it's going to solve itself. In this case, it's not. It's much more complex than that. But do I think that money has to be placed in the right areas? No question about it. It does. You need the right funding in the right areas to do it.
Is that a struggle?
It's complex.
It's
yes.
complex is the right. If I come over to your house, Natasha, you ask me to paint your house blue, and you come home and I paint your house red. Are you going to pay me for the job?
Probably not.
That's what has to happen. You'll pay me when I finally paint the house the color you asked me to paint it, and that is the simplest form. And we're painting the house blue several times right now because you have to
take a look.
And that's in essence what, right.
So if I were going to call a roundtable here to make so that top people who, and I don't mean top in position, but people who have the wisdom and the commitment to work together. Who would you want to be at that round table? Who would need to be here?
Well, I think you need educators. I think you need healthcare officials. I think you need certainly hospitals and some doctors as a result of it. I think you need legislators because I think that there has to be reimbursements, and I think that you would need that. I think you need some law enforcement people to give.
It's going to be a big table.
It's a big table. It's complex.
It's
not something it's something that's easy. But I think if you sit down, I mean, they have to develop a best practice, okay, and they have to be looking at outcomes.
We just have a short period of time. I just want to mention one thing because clearly things aren't changing that quickly. I recently met a physician at a networking event, and we were talking about the opioid epidemic and whatever. And I said, I had shown up at the emergency room and I was in pain and the doctor didn't even see me. The nurse took down the notes and then they said, okay, we're going to give you morphine. And I said, what? Excuse me, what? And so I said, no, thank you. Why are we starting with a narcotic? And they said, oh, well, what do you suggest? And I said, how about Tylenol or something like that? So anyway, he said that when anyone shows up into the emergency room and they're in pain, the protocol immediately is either morphine or Dilaudid. Okay? So that's it. He said if he's in the emergency room, he rescinds those orders, but that's it.
You want to know why it's like that?
Yes.
It's the health grade.
And we have 1 minute.
It's the health grading system. I mean, so who's in charge of the electoral college of the doctors, the lobbyists, the pharmaceutical? It's
complex.
It's complex. But for years, the hospital systems were graded whether whether your pain was being adequately addressed, and if it wasn't, why wasn't it? And that was done in the 90s and the early 2000s, and we're now paying the price for that type of procedure that went through. The fact is they weren't looking at alternatives. Everybody was then put on this protocol, but it's
still happening.
Right.
We are at the end of our time. It's gone by so quickly. Thank you for being here, for providing such really valuable information and things for people to think about. So thank you. And thank you both for being heartfelt, contributors and really your commitment to make a difference.
It's a pleasure and honor.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Same here. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Natasha Sherman. Thank you for joining us.